With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there at the end of the table?
Mark, I am doing great down here this end. How are things on your side of the table?
They're great over here, man. Look, I got all the technology set up, man. We are rolling tonight. Final show of 2023 for us, episode number 52, and actually, I think it's episode 202 for us, man. The end of season 4, believe it or not.
The end of season 4.
Isn't that crazy?
No,
you believe
it?
It?
Crazy.
I just think back to the first episode sitting around my kitchen bar upstairs, kitchen island, and you had that puffy, swooshy coat on, man. That was the whole show was just kind of a wreck. But
I hope that's been deleted.
No, it's still out there somewhere, man.
Wow, you can still download that?
Somewhere you can find that. Yeah, no doubt about it. But that's all right, man. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? And look where we are now, Matt. Come on.
Exactly. Look where we are.
Yeah, no doubt.
2 episodes in, finishing out season 4, end of 2023.
That's right. Finishing strong, man. We got some strong drinks here tonight. A strong guest as well. So we're excited to have this episode going. So we do want to thank all our sponsors. We appreciate everything they do for us. So thank you guys for that. And Matt, with that said, man, I should ask you, did you have a good Christmas since this is post-Christmas episode?
This is post-Christmas.
Yeah.
I had an absolutely lovely Christmas.
Awesome. Me too, man. So good times.
Family, good food, good friends.
Yeah.
It was great stuff you look forward to on a holiday.
And my daughter gave me a bottle of whiskey, believe it or not. It's pretty nice over. Yeah, from St. Petersburg, which never heard of it. So we'll see how that plays out. But It was still sweet of her to give her old man a bottle of whiskey. So Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us joining us on the show tonight?
Joining us, or you all this morning, this evening, this afternoon, whenever it is, you are listening to your Bourbon Life Podcast, is the star of episode 102. We brought him back for episode 202.
Oh, wow. Isn't that funny?
Right, 100 episodes later.
Yeah.
Sam Rock, the founder of Bluegrass Distillers here in Lexington, Kentucky. Sam, welcome on back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be here.
You know, Sam, I was looking back at the notes and things, and I was like, in my head, it was just like at the end of last year that you guys were on. And I'm going back looking through, and it was like the second show of January of 2022. And I'm like, how could it have been that long ago, man? So that's our fault for not having you back on.
No, there's a lot of interesting people to have on. And I mean, I understand. It does seem, I mean, like it's
because you guys
are
just like you guys are just down here. Like it seems like you and Ben were both just down here hanging out with us, and it does not seem like it was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, so
you have your collection's much larger.
Well, I'll show you during a break or at the end where there's a bunch of other bottles that I don't have displayed or room to put out anywhere. So
I'm sure, yeah.
there's a lot of stuff floating around here. Well, Sam, we're happy to have you back. Appreciate you being here. And Sam we talked about this on the other show, but Sam and I went to law school together. So Sam is an attorney as well. So it's always good. We can pile up on Matt now. Finally, I got somebody that I've got something in common with on the show. Matt's always like somebody's from Michigan or, somebody's a big hockey fan or whatever. So Matt's always got these things that come up with our other guests that make them all buddy. So now I got one of my college or my law school buddies with me, Matt. So you're outnumbered on this episode, bro.
No, I plead the fifth.
Well, there's a picture of you with a hockey stick. on the internet.
Oh, that's right, man.
Really, we're looking really good.
I was waiting for you, Matt, to comment. I'm disappointed you didn't comment on my AI hockey player picture.
Made mental comments.
I bet you did, man. I'm sure you did make some mental comments. So, Sam, you brought some good stuff for us to drink tonight. So why don't we just go ahead and talk about what you poured up for us on this first round? Just tell us what it is, and then we can kind of go from there.
So no foreplay tonight. Obviously, we're getting right to the
right to the
bourbon.
That's right.
So this is our Bluegrass Distillers Wheated Bourbon. It is it's 75-21-4, which is what all our mash bills are.
Okay.
So this is 75% corn, 21% wheat, and then 4% malted barley. We started making wheated bourbon probably in 15 or 16. So this bottle was probably from 15 or 16.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, I found this at the distillery, just full disclosure. It was on somebody's desk, so I have to take it back.
I love it.
But this is, wheated bourbon is one of my personal favorites of what we do. I like wheated bourbon in general.
Yeah.
Now, back in 15 and 16, we were still kind of like figuring it out, you know?
Right.
But it's still, I mean, it has probably when this is cast strength, probably when we dumped this, it was 5 or 6 years old. So it has aged into being what you want in a wheated bourbon. You know, it's softer than a high rye bourbon. Now this is a seasonal release for us because currently we're on a pot still and we distill approximately 2 to 250 a year.
Okay.
We've had years, especially during COVID, when we hardly made any. We were doing other things, but so we've had years that we didn't produce all that much, but we switched between the three mash bills. We switched between high rye, bourbon, wheated, traditional wheated, and then blue corn wheated.
Oh yeah.
And then we grow our own blue corn. So
Okay.
But we release this year. We've got wheated to release, and then we also have blue corn to release, and those will be spring and fall. I'm not sure which one we're doing when, but both of them will be at least 4 years, probably bottled in bond. Then we'll have some single barrels, but it's really been, one of the things when we get it out of the market, it sells really fast because there just are not very many wheated bourbons out there.
Sure.
Especially crafts. Partly because there's just not much of a wholesale inventory to buy in the world of wheated bourbon. Now we make all this, but so therefore, there's not a lot of competition for it. Most people who are drinking wheated are drinking sort of a heritage brand wheated. Right.
And
so this is sort of a unique horse in the race,
Sure, man. Very nice. Matt, what are you picking up on the nose?
It's got a nice fruity nose, like dried fruits. I'm picking like dried cherry, dried plum or fig. It kind of rings to me almost like a nice like fruit bread or like a fruited biscotti. There was a little bit of almond, some grain or bread note with it, definitely. I like that it has a nice, good pot stilled nose to it where there's just some good playfulness sometimes with a column still or with different distilling techniques. You get just this really tight nose, and this is nice. It's got a lot of different directions going on with it, and I really enjoy that. Actually, it's just a really, really nice, inviting nose.
It's I think you said fig, right? Yeah, because it's like almost like a Fig Newton type of aroma when I'm nosing this. But then I almost get kind of almost like a little bit of a butterscotch type of aroma as well at times. There's a sweetness coming through.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a little bit of a butterscotch thrown in as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like thinking fig, and then you're talking about kind of the bready flavor. It just made me think of the entire cookie, because you get that fig aroma, but you also get that bready kind of aroma like the actual Fig Newton cookie. But it's very nice. Got a great, very pleasant aroma. And what was this? This is 103 proof. Is that right, Sam? Yeah. So what about you, Sam? What do you pick up in terms of the nose? Anything?
So, I mean, one thing, and it's probably because it's such a 103, is it's not, I hardly smell any ethanol.
Yeah.
It's not boozy at all. It's all fruit. To me, it also smells like tapioca.
Oh, okay.
Which is one of my favorite smells.
Now, is that something you usually get on your wheaters, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, because tapioca to me is it's kind of like caramel, but not like too caramel.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's not as strong as vanilla.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it is in that fruity vanilla caramel sort of spectrum rather than like a rye bourbon,
right,
where it would have more spice.
Gotcha. Anything else stand out?
It's a little. I smell a little citrus. I mean, I smell a little orange.
Okay. Matt, anything else standing back out to you on that? Are you picking up any orange on it? Citrus? You get
there might, yeah, I get
a little hint. Now he said it, obviously the power of
like
suggestion, right? But
orange zest or like
Yep.
an orange zested like buttercream frosting.
Yep.
Kind of aroma where I think some of that sweetness, little butteriness, little sugar on it.
Yeah.
But like Sam was saying, not full on caramel. Certainly not
yeah.
like high rye kick and spice.
Yep. Very, very nice. So Sam, we had you on episode 102. Now here we are, 100 episodes later, 202. So we've talked about your background, but since it's been a while and we obviously have some new listeners, why don't we just take a little time, just tell everybody a little bit about of course, everybody knows you're an attorney now. I've already ruined that spoiler, or spoiler alert. I guess I've already ruined that, I should say. But tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and then how you got into the whiskey business.
Yeah. So I grew up in Versailles, and Versailles, at that time, there was no bourbon made down there. So, in fact, when we were in law school, I went to a 5K at LeBrow and Graham.
Oh.
And so they were just kicking it off. You know what I mean?
Right.
Woodford Reserve did not exist yet.
Holy crap.
Back in 1996,
that's
it didn't.
right.
No,
Nope. Because that's when they started. They started, actually, I think it was 96 was I guess the year they announced that they were going to start. Man, I mean, that's just crazy to think about.
And so that pond, actually, I used to fish in that pond.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was just a mossy pond, and a good buddy of mine were fishing out there. And I flipped him out of the boat one day. One of those deals where he said, "Don't flip. I'm going to stand up, but don't move the boat." And I was like,
Right.
"Of course not."
Why would I do that?
And then down the street was Old Taylor,
Right,
And
yeah.
it was just sort of ruins, and
That was a creepy old place, wasn't it?
it was so cool though, So like we were just as a kid, we were like around those places,
Right.
But there was no bourbon at all, really. And then I graduated law school from UK. I went to college in Virginia. I came back, went to law school, and then I ultimately went and worked at a law firm where Tom Bullitt worked.
Yeah.
And Tom Bullitt was just beginning Bullitt Bourbon, and in fact, it had not really released. He like showed me the bottle, and he's like, "Look at this bottle."
Yeah.
He was like rubbing his hand across it, like cool. What did it say? Pioneer whiskey or something like that.
Was the old white. Was that white label with that big, long, stretched out bullet or something? It was the label. The old labels are, obviously very different, but yeah.
He just had the bottle, and he was like rubbing his hand. I was like, "Why are you doing that? Nobody cares about bourbon. People just drink it in a plastic bottle. It just says gentleman on it. Never makes you a gentleman."
No, I remember I remember that time frame, and I'm thinking he's crazy. I didn't know Tom, but I'm like, he's nuts, man. Nobody cares about this.
Yeah, and he's like a really just a cool guy, and I like doing work for him, so it was a little bit bittersweet that he was moving out of law practice. Ultimately, everybody wants to do, right? So,
30 years for me next year, bro. I'm ready to pack it up and get out.
So then later I moved out of state for a while.
Right.
And when I moved back into Kentucky, strangely enough, I moved into a house that was owned by Ed Foote.
Okay.
Bourbon Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
Master distiller, Stitzel-Weller distiller.
Right.
And then the girl who lived next door to me, her dad was the former president of Glenmore in Owensboro.
No kidding.
So it's like all these weird things, right? So, and then later when we hired a girl to be a designer, it was Ed Foote's granddaughter. So
that's really weird, man.
So, I was living in Atlanta. I really wanted to come back to Kentucky.
Yeah.
and I was dating my wife, Keely. She wasn't my wife then. We were.
It's always good for you to date your wife.
Yeah.
Though, you know? Never let that romance die, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. So I would come back, and this friend of mine and I went and looked at Castle and Key, which was Old Taylor, and he actually was one of the founders, but he's no longer with the entity anymore. But so we were talking about some things we could do down there, and we potentially, we looked at that place actually, to consider. I mean, not very seriously, but we looked at all the tanks and talked about, maybe we should get into the bourbon business, and so we did, but we didn't at that time. We did not know whether we were going to be distillers or whether we were going to be called rectifiers. So, like at that time, people would call them rectifiers. This is like 2012.
Yeah.
NDPs were not really around yet.
Right.
So, nor was bulk spirit. Green River didn't exist.
Yeah.
Bardstown Bourbon didn't exist. Wilderness was one DSP ahead of us. They were on a 250-gallon electric still. So like, the only entity that was distilling it all for bulk was MGP. Yeah. So, we just decided we wanted to, be on the mash, so to speak. And so we bought this still from Portugal, and we started distilling out of the back of the warehouse at West 6th.
Right.
And I would go in there with my dog, and when I'd come back on the weekends and distill, and then we got with the UK School of Chemical Engineering right when they started their distillation program.
Right.
And Brad Barron sent over some interns who basically started like scooping the corn into the still, and we would mash and distill in the same distill.
Okay.
So like, and at that point it was on the flame, so it would like kind of char the corn, and then we would do little batches in crock pots. The interns would. That's how they kind of developed the blue corn. So I mean, it was. We didn't have a real cooker, so we used a 185-degree continuous water heater.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So we did. You probably saw it over there. I mean,
that's awesome. Man.
But so we started, and we still distill in that same space.
Yeah.
Now we just do more shifts, and we're expanding, and we'll talk about that later. But we've done, almost anything you can do in a pot still. We've done single malt.
Right.
We've done rye whiskey. We've done all kinds of different bourbons. We learned how to do the stuff in like really rough conditions, how to keep equipment sanitary.
Yeah.
Using very minimal technology, and so hopefully that'll make the transition a little bit easier. So, we started and did all that until 2020, which is when COVID hit.
Right.
And that was sort of an inflection point for our team, really, because we got used to doing things at like really high pace. So obviously the government sort of co-opted the distilleries, and we were making hand sanitizer, and we employed probably 20 or 30 people per shift from the Hope Center, and
nice.
I mean, like everything, we just improvised. We used Igloo 5-gallon jugs to distribute the sanitizer, and we were grounding and bonding people with like little bracelets attached to the table. So, we just kind of moved past what we were doing,
right?
In terms of a business model, but also sort of like the ambition and sort of the engine of our people had changed, and they went from like being happy with distilling a very little bit and being content to be just sort of a craft hobby to like wanting bigger things. So like essentially that's what we're doing. We're on this freight train of moving on to the next level,
which is going to be great, and we'll definitely talk about that in the next round and what's going on. So I love the story, and I love the fact that you shared it again with us.
Sorry about that.
No. That's what I wanted you to do, man. So, but hey, do me a favor. Just hand me that bottle, because I'm going to show everybody, but I'm going to have to pour up a little bit more. But let's talk about Matt, you're looking at me like, what? So yeah, cool label. And these labels changed. Was it year before last?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. So very cool labels. Everybody can see that.
Remember the last one looked like a crossing guard?
Yeah.
And it was a jockey, but people would always ask why there's a crossing guard.
There's a crossing guard on your whiskey. Oh yeah, actually, I probably still have. I guarantee there's a bottle somewhere.
It is so. It's kind of like you said about your first episode. Our first bottle, I hope, is not around anywhere.
I won't dig it out, but I know I've got one.
If it has the stripe on it, I know we do not want to drink it.
I know I've got it somewhere, man. So, Matt, what do you think in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
First off, it's really oily.
Yeah,
really.
I noticed that in the glass, man. It was like when you took a drink. When I took a drink, it was like clinging.
It's so thick it doesn't even like hardly run in the glass. You have to like scrape the sides of the glass to get all of it off. So really oily, really creamy in the mouth. Has a really great viscosity.
That's crazy.
But the fig that we were talking about, Mark, on the nose, really carries through to me on the palate. I get like fresh fig. Yeah, not like dried fig, not like Fig Newton fig, but like
fresh. Yeah,
fresh off the tree, or like a fresh fig. There's a little bit of almond, like a little buttery almond flavor in there as well. The wheat really shines through, I think, with this. It's got like those good wheat, sweet bread type notes to it, like sweet pie crust, sweet dough, almost like a sweet bread type. Think like dessert, but not quite a donut type bread to it, with a nice warm finish. I think the finish is it's not like cinnamon hot, it's not spicy hot, but just good and warming, like honey tea.
Yeah, I think that's kind of surprised me, Matt. I wasn't expecting that on the finish.
Yeah,
but it's just a nice little spicy, warm tingle, and it lingers. That's really cool too. I like it. Not drying at all, just very nice, almost creamy type of flavor to it, or oily mouthfeel. But I do agree with you, Matt. The sweetness on the palate is there. But yeah, overall very nice. So what about Sam? What else do you pick up? Palate.
Well, I pick up the bread notes as well, and it's kind of light on the vanilla.
Yeah.
I know that with this particular product, when you put it over ice, it really opens up the sweetness of it.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, and so I do like to drink it on ice rather than neat.
Okay.
And some things I do, and some things I don't.
Yeah.
But this one in particular, I do. I taste apricot and I taste the fig. I don't hardly taste any spice at all, really.
Agreed.
And so if you're someone who doesn't like a lot of spice, like this is a nice entry. Entry is not the right word, but I mean, I think wheated bourbons have a particular place in the world, and it's for people who don't want that huge bite. You're not looking for like a cold morning, that something's going to wake you up. You're out there, but I mean, you can do this. Probably not at work, but it
depends on where you work.
Yeah, right.
Or if you work at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope none of my coworkers. Just kidding, coworkers.
Not when you're doing any titles, of course.
Yeah, not what I'm doing. Actual real work. No, of course not. Yeah, well, very nice. I really enjoy this one. So, and this is the Bluegrass. This is the wheated, and it's 103 proof. So yeah, man, very nice. And this is you said annually you release the wheated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Very, very nice. So guys, we're actually at the end of round one. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back in just a minute with more with Sam Rock with Bluegrass Distillers in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, Matt. This is like the 6th week in a row or something that we have been live in the studio together, right?
I'm not going to know what to do when I get back in front of the computer.
I'm telling you, man, we just need to make this the standard. Like, tell everybody, you're going to have to come to my basement, whether you like it or not.
Right. I don't care where you are.
I don't care where you are. You're traveling.
You got to come to the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as Mark's basement.
That's right. That's when they started asking for the travel expenses and the stipend and daily meals and everything else too, though, right? So that's
the stuff I've been asking for.
Sorry about that, Matt. We're still working on it. Maybe season 5.
Oh yeah, that's when the benefits package comes.
We'll see what happens with season 5. Maybe we get some new sponsors on board, man. We'll see what we can do for you, Matt. Oh, man. All right, Matt. So let's get back to it. If you want to, I do need to thank all of our sponsors, of course. Yeah. So thank you all, our sponsors. We obviously couldn't do the show without all of your help and support. So we appreciate you guys sticking with us and helping us do this, what we love and what we enjoy, sharing our passion with our listeners. So thank you guys for that. With that said, Matt, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us if they're just joining us?
Absolutely. I don't know why you would just join in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah, they may. I don't know, Matt.
They may just fast forward 20.
Yeah, they may be like, I don't want to listen to round 1. I'm just going to skip over that.
Hey, you're right. Maybe. Anyway, Sam Rock is the founder of Bluegrass Distillers right here in Lexington, Kentucky, and we are so fortunate to have him back on. Sam, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
Happy to have you back. So this time you got something a little different. This was actually from my personal collection, but it's one of your products. So why don't you tell her? We just cracked it. I've had it for 2 years? Is that
probably a year?
I can't remember when.
Yeah, I think it's probably a year. I think we released it in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I can't remember when I.
I mean, I didn't even remember last time I'd been here, so I don't know.
Oh man. Well, go ahead and tell everybody what it is that we're drinking.
So this here is Bluegrass Elkwood Reserve, and so this is a 9-year product. It's at 108. I think this is cask strength. Elkwood is the name of the farm we bought in Midway.
Okay.
And so this is a line we'll release that are sort of unique barrels that we find, this is sort of our premium line that we'd never really gotten in. We always try to stay in sort of the 40 to 60 range. And so this is anything that we release in this range, 8, 9, 10, 12, not forever, but for the short term will be Elkwood. And these are kind of like special releases. They're kind of like Nike shoe drops,
Right.
That seems to work in this industry.
It does, man. I was there. I was like, I saw it on Instagram. I'm like, I'm there. Next morning, here I am.
It's funny. And so when we would release stuff in like 15 and 16, we'd put it in the Herald Leader, and there'd be people out the door. It was still like,
wow.
It was still like young. Bourbon was still like young. Right. It seems like. And now we do releases. I mean, I'm glad you came to this, but it's not near the fanfare that it used to be.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot more going on. But and so we will release these a couple times a year. This one is just sort of unabashed. The bourbon as we found it.
Right.
We liked it as was.
Okay.
And then we had some other bottles that we released in the distillery. This next round we're going to release. It's Kentucky only, so we're going to release it with our distributor and out of the tasting room. And then probably around Christmas we'll release something different. We might finish that one. I have some personal favorites, the way I like to finish things, which we've learned from our Midway line because it's all Midway rye that's finished.
Right.
And so, but yeah, I mean, so we're in the bourbon wholesaling business as well.
Right. Yeah.
With Chevalier Casks, and so we see a lot of barrels.
Yeah.
Bulk bourbon, and also just sort of things that investor groups have or other brands have that they're selling them. And so whenever we find something we think is really unique, we try to cobble together the money and get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but you know, that's what this is. And so Bluegrass actually has an 8 or a 9-year bourbon that's our own that we're releasing this year also.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So I think we'll release that probably like right around the official opening of the distillery in the spring.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we're thrilled to try this stuff. I think it's a fun way to try unique bourbons made by different distilleries, not only ours. It's kind of a tribute to the Bourbon Brotherhood. And, you know, it's also sort of an exercise in how do you blend bourbons and selecting. And, you know, we kind of put our team to work because they've got many years of experience to help figure, you know, blending these things and now this is a single barrel, but you know, picking the ones that work well together.
Yeah. So do you do the Elkwood, are they blended at all, or are these?
This one actually was, I think.
So that's not actually.
No, this is a single barrel.
I can't remember if it was or not.
I forgot my specs, but
that's all right, man.
But you know, time's catching up. But this release that's coming out in January will be blended.
Okay, gotcha.
One bottle will be released as a single barrel out of the distillery, but then the blending will be that's released into the market. And the blending, I mean, I think it really helps you get a more consistent product.
Yeah.
If that's what you're trying to do, and hone some notes and without like cold filtering and charcoal filtering and doing all the stuff that obviously you can do to sort of change the character of the bourbon.
Yeah.
But the blending helps you, you know, mellow the thing out or get the nose or the notes you want.
Now, is this all Kentucky? Kentucky
Yep.
straight? Okay. I was gonna say I couldn't see the label. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I thought it was, but Matt, what are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one?
The nose on this one has gone in a couple different directions since it's been in the glass.
Yeah.
When it started, I picked up really sweet notes at first. When I first poured it up and started working it around, picked up some of the marshmallow, sweet bruleed sugar, brown sugar type notes. Now that it's sitting around and it's gotten some air to it and I've played with it in the glass a little bit, getting hazelnut, like a nutty aroma is really coming through. It's not as strong as peanut to me. That's why I said hazelnut, which kind of fits that bill. But there is still kind of a vanilla, marshmallow, toffee, nougat sort of sweetness with it.
Yeah.
And another aroma that's really coming out as it sits in the glass and it gets more air is the oak, picking up really, really nice, like soft, subtle oak. Certainly not overpowering. I know sometimes when bourbons get a little older, you can pick up too much oak and it's just like a slap in the face. But this actually just has a really, really nice flavor and aroma of oak on the nose to play with everything else.
I get that. You know, it's funny because a couple of times I got like little hints of leather, very, very light hints that came through. But then also like cherry. I get cherry on this for some reason. It just, that's what it comes across, that sweetness to me. It's almost like a cherry aroma. And I may just say that because that's why I identify sweetness as. So to me, it's like cherry. But it may be something different to you guys. But yeah, a little bit of that oak comes through as well, Matt. The nougat, I like that you said that because I see what you're saying on that. It makes sense as well. Sam, what about you? What do you pick up?
So it depends on where I put my nose. But if I put my nose sort of like right on the rim, I do get the cherry and I get the oak.
Okay.
And you know, it's a rye bourbon, so I get a little spice too.
Yeah. Yeah, and these are barrels. This is a barrel you guys bought. You sourced it.
Yep.
Can you talk about where it came from, or is that Yeah. That's all right, man. I just thought I'd ask because
I mean, I understand how those things work. I write them sometimes.
I was going to say, as an attorney, I understand what you're talking about. Sam.
Somebody said to me one time, you know, well, this is all in your favor. I'm like, well, of course it is. That's why I wrote it.
Because I wrote it that way, dude. That's the benefit of being the drafter.
That's right.
Like first day of contracts, they teach you that.
Yeah, you got to get your own lawyer to get you.
Exactly right, man. Sorry, what do you pick up else on the nose?
Sorry, I was picking it up on the mouth.
Uh-oh. He's jumped ahead, Matt. We're going to reel him back in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's spicy, it's oaky, it has cherry, it has a little apricot. I don't find it to be like really soft, sweet, like vanilla or tapioca, like I would describe
like
the
your
wheated.
wheat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really different.
Yeah. It is.
It's not like really, really high rye, like a 36% either.
Yeah.
So,
So are you more partial yourself to I mean, you've been doing a pot still forever, but as a bourbon drinker, is that what you're still more partial to that, or?
I mean, we just talked about this. You get a different range of flavors.
Sure, yeah.
So like there are parts of it as a distiller that I know when people want product made for them, they want consistency.
Right.
And so that's what a pot still, or that's what a column still will do for you.
Sure.
And like, I think having the background in a column still, our distilling teams understand sort of the range and spectrum of flavors that you get at different proof, which is in relation to heat. So, the hotter it gets, the lower the proof, you're going to get sort of different congeners and flavors. So you can play with that in a column still. And so I think what people traditionally do is they just, they find where they like it at the still and they pull it off, and that's part of the art of a column still, which is different than a pot still because you're basically pulling it off at heat, and the heat is really driving you because at some point you're not getting as much alcohol out. And you just it just gets hotter, so you just get a different range, and it's thicker. Like pot still products are going to be thicker. So I don't know that I'm partial.
Gotcha. Okay.
But they're just different.
Different animals, right? So, you talk about this being kind of homage to the new farm where you guys are going to be located. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, because last time you were on, I think you guys had just announced it was just announced right around that time.
That's right.
That you guys were going to be doing the new distillery out in Midway. So let's talk about that, because I was out there for your groundbreaking. That was really fun. Had a good time doing that. That was a lot of fun. The governor came out, man. It was like a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
It was a big celebration, right? So, but talk about what's going on, man.
It's right on 64 on the exit when you get off in Midway. It's been a long time coming. We looked at that particular property, I think, in 2017.
Did you really?
Yeah, Midway came and they were like, "Would you want to come to Midway?" And we were like, "Man," I personally was like, "I don't think so. We want to stay in Lexington." And then the reality of distilling and rick houses and all that is you just need land.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to zone the warehouses. Lexington, you really can't. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And so we embarked on this journey and ended up buying it in the end of 2020. Like we got under contract in the beginning of 2020 and did some diligence, and the house is on the National Historic Registry because it was built in 1832 to 1835. And so we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office, and we were doing some other things relating to funding. And then we really got going on the construction last October. And so since that time, we built the warehouse, 18,000 square foot warehouse, which is probably about a third full now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Not our own product. We have some of our product in there. And then we store for other people, which is also nice. We have our own product there.
Yeah.
So rather than not all of it, but a lot of it. And so what we used to do, at least on batching of our own products, is we would order barrels and we would basically get the barrels in, and that's all we could do. Well, now we will have the ability to like just pull down more barrels and like sift through more barrels to get to what we want. And then some of the people that we store for do sort of a similar thing.
Okay.
So in sort of, the esprit de corps, we let them come out there and test stuff, and they're like, "Can we get out there?" We're like, "Absolutely."
Yeah. I was talking to somebody today, as a matter of fact, that was just filling barrels that I think they're shipping them out to you guys.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Somebody here downtown Lexington, as a matter of fact.
So that's fun. We get to know those people.
Yeah.
And what they're doing, and so we have the warehouse going. That was a major effort. Then we're now. Probably the building is about 2/3 constructed.
Okay.
And so the building is 21,000 feet. Interestingly, the erector was an immigration client of mine. came over undocumented.
Really?
His brother was injured really in a bad accident, so I represented the family. Jose did not speak any English at the time, was undocumented, got residency, and now has this huge, steel erection.
No kidding.
I'm so proud of this guy.
Yeah,
it's
that's awesome, man.
It's just so cool. So he's out there, and he's got all these people working. His family's working. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And so, they're really rolling over there. We had to do a lot of groundwork. The same concrete company, Cask Concrete, who did the barrel warehouse, did this warehouse. And, we had local people, R.W. Hicks and his crew, do the groundwork. And it's just been, they're like a family now. So like I talk to them all the time, and everybody was wishing everybody Merry Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of thing. And
very nice.
I didn't get that many of my law clients wishing me, but so now we're almost done with the building, at least the structure. We'll start the electrical work.
Yeah.
We've got the still is out there.
Oh, it is?
The
Okay.
cooker's there. So we'll start like erecting the still probably soon, because we had to leave one part of the building open so you get the still in. It's 50-some feet high.
How big?
50. It's 50. Wow. So the beer heater and the still is 52 feet high. So the still's, I think, 48.
Wow.
And then the beer heater basically sits, 4 feet above, and there's 2 feet of space. And so it's a tall beast.
Yeah, sounds like it. Wow.
It's an amazing machine. So, then we've got the steel mezzanines coming in and finishing the tasting room and things like that. But, I pretty much have all sleepless nights, and so I get up and I think about, who I got to talk to about what.
Yeah, man.
What permit are we trying to get done? Because we use groundwater for cooling. So we've got permitting with that. We put the groundwater back in the stream. We've got permitting with that. We've got, all kinds of.
Now, are you doing the legal work too? I'm just curious.
There's not much legal work.
Oh, okay.
But yes, whatever legal work is.
You're doing.
done.
Okay.
There have been some things that have been like way outside my comfort level,
Right.
that were really highly skilled that I didn't get into.
Yeah.
But most of the permitting,
It's just straightforward.
Yeah, it's straightforward.
Just a lot of work,
So,
paperwork, right?
yeah, and I've spent a life doing a bunch of paperwork.
gonna say,
I can check boxes and write sentences and draw diagrams, and but we've but we're really getting there, and so I think that in March, end of March, we'll be up and going.
Are you think you'll be open then? Is that the Okay, cool, man.
It'll be clunky. End of March, we've got some contracts that we need to fill, and we also we'll start bringing in barrels from Spain. That's where we were able to allocate the barrels.
Okay.
And those are American white oak barrels, but the wood's age longer. It's aged 24 months rather than a kiln dried barrel. So, but we also use local barrels here. But the main direction for our product is going to be in the older staves, in the barrels with the older staves, to give it. Really, the barrels, when they're young, they have more tannin, and as it ages out, the tannins wash out.
Right.
Especially if they're air dried, it just washes out on the ground. So, that's it. Eventually, the barrels are a little bit tighter than traditional bourbon barrels too. So you have should be a better yield, and we use them now. So we look at them, so we know what they look like, and
nice.
So it's just sort of a different way to approach it. And the barrel's a little bit more expensive. So we've kind of worked that into our pricing, but at the time we were trying to secure barrels, we couldn't get any barrels.
Really?
No, they were like totally sold out everywhere.
Wow.
And so,
that sucks being we're a distillery and we got no place to put it.
That was like, it scared me to death.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
When our main supplier was like, no, we can't give you the barrels. I was like, whoa, this is not good.
Not good. Yeah.
So,
got his hacksaw out. He's back out in the backyard.
Right. That's right. That's right. So we were fortunate enough to find some overseas. I had a friend, former client, who was over there. I speak Spanish, so that was
nice.
A good, it just worked. And,
everything happens for a reason, right?
That's right. That's right. That is right.
Seriously. Think about it. Mm-hmm. Former client, now he's getting you barrels.
Yeah.
Former
client, now he's building the warehouse.
Building your warehouse. Seriously, dude. That's crazy. That's great. And I love the fact that all the things. It's like everything has led serendipitously to this point. I mean, all these little things that just kept going on and happening have really kind of led you down this path, which has been really cool. So we don't have a lot.
That's why we're here, because we went to law school together.
That's right, man. Exactly right. I was going to ask you because I'm just kind of curious. I mean, obviously, we've never built a distillery. Our listeners probably have not built a distillery. So what has like been the thing that, is there anything that's really surprised you the most? Like, oh my God, I did not anticipate this being such a big pain in the ass. Is there anything that you just kind of weren't expecting that has come up that you're like, oh man, wow.
Yeah. The interest rate went from 2.5 to 9.5. I did not.
Story. It
doubled the payment.
Oh,
so like it. So that time is, things change radically with time.
Oh yeah.
So like, it takes so long to get these things done. So like, I think people, when they're going about building a still or a new distillery, size is one thing that's really like the most important thing.
Yeah.
So, really it's what do you need? We could have gone a lot smaller, like a 36-inch column still is very ambitious. We did not intend to sell out all 40,000 barrels. In fact, we just tried to sell less than 10, 7.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's just something that you age into, or maybe you don't. But either way, it was fine with us.
Yeah.
It's the part that is really complicated is just like how technical it all is. Like everything is about 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy, like your mezzanine, it's off 1/2 an inch. The tanks won't fit in there. Everything is basically prefab. So I was actually looking at mezzanine prints that we had done about, I got them. They were done 2 months ago, and then I got the shop drawings, and I was going over them again this week because they build this stuff really quickly. Once you find the people, like that's the other thing that takes a long time. So I'm going over this thing, and I was like, wow, that's missing this. But I mean, we would have built that thing, and it would have been lacking, basically a catwalk behind the tanks. And so, but I just happened to find it. So the other thing that I think is really hard, unless you do this on a daily basis, and even if you do it on a daily basis, is finding the right price.
Yeah.
I mean, because like you can buy the same thing for 3 times as much. So our goal was to have a note that we could basically handle. Like we weren't really, the numbers that I hear about distilleries, I mean, that's fine when people do that, but that's not what we did.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I get it.
And we were, our goal was to be a meager, humble distillery, kind of like we've always been, and just produce it, produce a facility on a budget. So like we basically, the bank set our budget. They said, this is how much you have to spend. And then we got with a leasing company, which also said sort of the same thing. And we said, okay, we got to make it work in that. And so I did have a background in construction. So like we're out there using the guys that I use in construction anyway. They're just doing different things. And, but it's amazing just how much it takes in utilities, because you have, all the groundwater. The cooling capacity is what really will blow you away. Like you're like, well, the still is one thing, but how do you cool it? So either you have to use chillers and water towers or groundwater and a combination of all 3. And then you have to factor in the size of ponds. So like it's always like I've got this dance between like 4 or 5 engineers around me, which are more frustrating than lawyers. The only people that are more frustrating than lawyers are engineers.
Yeah.
So
tell me about it. I work with a bunch of them.
Yeah,
so,
there you go. So
I thought you did for some reason, but so I think it's just the volume of tasks.
Yeah.
Volume of tasks, holding on to your budget, and just deciding what you absolutely can't. If you can't live without it, you can't have it.
Right.
And so, like, we do that a lot. I'm like, nah, you can't have it. And so, like, while you're managing the construction of a distillery, and we currently have one, I'm also we are managing the budget of our other distillery.
Right. Yeah. So you're still running a business while you're building a business, basically. So that's crazy.
And so so strangely enough, OND, October, November, December, is really the slow time for distilleries.
Oh, okay.
So most people think, my dad had a liquor store when I was a kid, and he was like, well, that's the biggest time of the year.
The big
for
time.
you.
For you, yeah.
Not for us.
You're selling stuff. We're not making.
But, they offer discounts, and people just run over to the store and buy.
Right.
And so, but distilleries, they're really lean. They cut back their staff.
Sure.
Other than some huge heritage ones, but they're even relatively slower. It's not the trail season. So we're dealing with, in the height of our construction period, managing the slowest time of the year.
Right.
And when we get close to done, it'll be ramping up like that into the most busy time of the year. So like March, it all breaks loose again. And,
right.
when you're just like, I can't take it anymore.
You'll be opening a new place.
And then they come in, then you're like, okay, they're back. We got one more year. So, but yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, man. And I appreciate you sharing the insight because, like I said, obviously we've never done it. Our listeners have never done it. So it's just, it's good to hear somebody that's going through it, that your first time, just the experience that you're having going through it. So it's interesting. Let's jump back to the whiskey. Can I see that bottle though, Sam, the Elkwood? I'll hold it up. So, since I've got it, I better pour a little bit more. Matt, while I'm doing that, why don't you tell everybody what you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish, and I'll show everybody this beautiful bottle.
I pick up a nice palate. Has like a peanut brittle. It's that nutty flavor, that hazelnut that I picked up on the palate.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more pronounced into sort of a peanut and a brittle. So there's like a toasted or boiled or cooked off sugar, darker sugar in there. I think the brittle notes come through. There's definitely a creaminess, a vanilla, kind of a smoky oak flavor in it as well, with some nice heat. This one does have a little bit of more of the baking spice. I think there's probably some rye influence.
Yeah, you said this is a rye mash. Oh, I mean it's a bourbon. But low rye mash bill, right? Okay. Yeah, but still, it's there.
Yeah, there's some rye influence, some of the baking spices that we all come to love so much from the ryes. Just drinks really well. This is just like a very flavorful, good drinking bourbon.
Yeah, at 108, I'm surprised how, I don't want to say it's an easy drinker, but kind of surprised that it is. There's not a lot of heat, it doesn't pack a punch, so it's at 108. This is not drink to me. I would think like 94 proof, maybe something like that.
I think it's older than 9 years.
I agree with that as well. Yeah, that's why, when I was nosing it, I was like getting those little notes of almost like a leather, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird because that's usually what I pick up on older whiskey sometimes. So yeah, kind of, but even on the palate, I agree, Matt, it does kind of drink older than the 9 years that it is. Sam, what about you? What do you get?
Yeah, I think it drinks soft. It doesn't drink like, something that's like 108 or 109.
Right.
I do think it's oaky. It doesn't linger as much.
I agree with that as much as your wheated, right?
As much as the wheated.
Yeah.
And that's good and bad. Sometimes things linger and you don't want them to.
Right.
But I do get the spice. I get some vanilla, but not like way too much. If you don't like a whole lot of vanilla, you probably would like this. More like spicy and cherry and a little bit of apricot. I don't get much marshmallow. I do get the peanut butter though. It's funny you said that, the peanut brittle, because like when I first tasted it, I was like, that's nutty. That's a little bit nutty.
Yeah.
And so I taste the nuttiness too. Not like nutmeg.
Right.
But
actual nutty like peanut.
Yeah. Or like an almond or something like that.
Very nice. Yeah, I enjoyed that one for sure. No doubt about it. I'm glad I got to crack that. And who better to crack it with than the guy that actually put it out, right? So, come on. Happy I was able to do that, man.
Me too.
Well, guys, let's take a quick break. We're at the end of round 2. So let's take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Sam Rock with Bluegrass Distillers in just a minute. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes And it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, as Matt said, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing? Down at the end of the Bourbon Life table.
Good. Mark, I'm doing great. I'm getting so comfortable down at the table after 6 or 7 episodes in a row around this table.
Around the table, man. I think what we're going to do is just set up our computers here. So even if we record remotely, rather than sitting, we'll just sit at the table, right? That might not work very well, but anyway. All right, I'm going to get back to the show so we can stop driving our listeners crazy. But we are having a good time tonight, man. So drinking some really good stuff. Do want to thank all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for everything you do for us. We couldn't do the show without your help, so thank you for that. With that said, Matt, just in case anybody just happened to randomly tune into the third round. No.
Yeah, third round only.
Yeah. You want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. We've got the founder of Bluegrass Distillers in Lexington, Kentucky, or Midway, Kentucky, Sam Rock. Sam, welcome back for our final round.
You rock, Sam.
Thanks. I like it when little kids say Sam rocks. It's Sam's dad, Sam Rocks.
Sam Rocks. There you go, man. Sam, how you doing? You doing all right?
I'm doing good. And we're on to glass 3 here. I mean,
number 3. You want to tell her? I'll hold out the bottle if you want to tell everybody what we're drinking on this round.
So this is our toasted oak. Well, so this is a secondary barrel. It's a second barrel, and the second barrel is toasted.
Okay.
And so some of the barrels we've used new barrels because we couldn't find used barrels for a while. But typically, what we do is we take a used barrel, one of our former bourbon barrels, send it up to Kelvin, and they bore it out, and then they just toast it.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
Not char, just toast, meaning they just warm it up on the inside, bring the sugars to the surface.
Okay.
And so what we wanted to do was basically create a sugar bomb.
Okay.
And so that's what it is.
Gotcha.
And so we put it in the barrel, and a couple of our people taste it, and really they found sort of like a sweet spot, no pun intended, at about 30 to 45 days in that barrel.
Okay.
If it goes longer, it just kind of like converts back into like an oaky thing. But like, and an oaky thing is great, but that's not what this is designed to do.
Right.
This is designed to be like a really soft drinking, sweet bourbon, and the experiment, and everything is always an experiment. But we found sort of a good spot for this bourbon, and like reusing the used barrels, and we can reuse them 2 or 3 times.
Right.
At which point Kelvin usually says, Sam, you're being too cheap. You need another barrel.
These barrels are dead. They are dead.
Is it coming out of the staves yet?
Send them to Scotland. They're dead, right? Right. Let them put some scotch in them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's how we make it. And it's turned out to be a really well-liked bourbon. And I think it has something to do with people who are entering bourbon, of all different walks of life. They're younger than they were when we started. I mean, the average bourbon drinker when we started this was a 51-year-old white male, and now you have just as many women drinking bourbon and trying bourbon and experimenting with bourbon as men. And it's not just a cocktail culture. It's also, an on-the-rocks culture. And it's also a neat culture with, like, all the people who are coming in. So this hits that profile. And is not far out on one spectrum or the other. It's not, too sweet because it is a ride bourbon. Because once you finish it in the toasted barrel, it makes it a little bit sweeter, but it's not too spicy. It's not too sweet because my thinking is if we did this with a wheated bourbon, it would be really too sweet.
Sure, that makes sense.
And so so I think it kind of hits a nice spot, and the toasted barrel really mellows it out. And then also, it gets to be oxidized a little bit when you transfer it one barrel to the next.
Yeah.
And there's always a lot oxidation that goes on when you filter it and send it through to bottle. But it's part of the finishing program that we like. We also finish all the Midway products. But those are all rye whiskeys.
Yeah.
So
and those had just come out, I think, right around the time you were on the show last time. I think
I think so.
Those had just been released, right? So Yeah.
And this one here is Lee's Branch. We name them all after sort of a significant place in Midway.
Gotcha.
And that's what the train is. But this is Lee's Branch. Lee's Branch is actually the stream that runs through town.
Oh, okay.
This one's finished in French oak, and they're all finished in something different.
Yeah, different barrels.
So this toasted oak is the only bourbon we do that way. Now
Okay.
we might try Elkwood in a finished barrel for this Christmas relief.
Oh,
just
yeah.
to make it
Okay.
unique.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So the toasted oak, I mean, people, you hear the term, it's a double oaked or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yes. So this has gone into a second barrel, but it's just not a charred barrel. It's just a toasted barrel. So that's a difference because most of these double oaked or whatever, it's like heavily charred or lightly charred or whatever. So most of them are doing a char of some form on it. So you guys are just toasting, is that right?
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we have done that,
Oh, okay.
and we do it in the rye whiskey.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so we've charred them, and we call it reclaim and recharred.
Yeah. Okay.
And but the toasted barrel is sweeter than the charred barrel.
Yeah.
So we just found that this is the way we like to do it with the bourbon. The customer really tells you what's working.
Sure.
And I mean, so we when we do the ryes, and this is what I think is so cool, and our director of marketing, Maggie Young, came up with this sort of like this thought is that the ryes are all the same base product. And so when you're trying them next to each other, you have a Sauternes finished, you have a rum barrel finished,
Right.
you have a French oak toasted, and then you have a reclaimed and recharred American white oak. And the reclaimed and recharred American white oak, people just didn't like it as much as the others.
Huh.
It was just too, I don't know if it's too oaky or it doesn't depart enough from just a traditional rye, whereas the toasted French oak has that real creamy French oak kind of thing that you get.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And sort of obviously Sauternes is a totally different thing, and rum has a very different nose. We actually have one that's finished in vermouth as well.
Oh, okay.
And that has a really strange nose.
Yeah,
I don't know that I love it.
I was gonna say I'm not a vermouth fan, so I'm not sure about a whiskey and vermouth. But hey,
but people,
people like it, right?
people like it, and the Sauternes, frankly, we were thinking about discontinuing it.
Yeah.
And then people in Texas started liking it, and so, and then some other big brands came out with Sauternes finished, and that's what people want now. You know what I mean?
There you go.
But it just depends on kind of like, we don't have because we're still a craft, we don't have enough of a cross section to really know.
Sure.
It's not like we're in 50 states.
Right.
And,
Right.
we're moving 10,000 cases a year, and we have a very small, data points but in the tasting room, we do have a lot of data points. And our data point is that people really like toasted products.
Sure.
In comparison to the only reclaimed and recharred char we have, which is a recharred rye.
Interesting. Matt, what do you pick up on this one?
It's definitely sweet on the nose.
Yeah, it is.
Sugars come across from the wood. I like that it is the rye mash bill. I think it adds like a nice molasses cookie or like some sort of a sugar cookie, like molasses cookie, not quite a ginger snap, but there's definitely like a baked cookie aroma on it. And I'm actually finding it to be somewhat fruity as well. It's got like a good amount of like sweet red fruit, like strawberry, bright berry on it as well.
I was getting that, and believe it or not, I was actually getting coconut on this.
Oh, wow.
Out of I don't know if it's the toasted oak sugar that brings that coconut flavor out. And I don't get a lot of coconut on bourbons. Every once in a while, it'll happen. But there's just this light hint. So there's a fruitiness, and I get it. It's almost like strawberry-ish to me. But then it kind of transitions over to a sweetness of like a coconut. It's kind of going back and forth for me. But I agree, Matt. Very sweet on the nose, man. So I really like that. What's the rye content on your? Can you?
Well, it's either 21% or
Okay.
it'll go between 20 or 21 to 25.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, it's still a nice percentage of rye. It's not like a 10% or anything like that. But yeah, I really like that. Sam, what else do you pick up in terms of the nose? What do you get on it?
Well, I think it's, a lot sweeter than this mash bill would be if it hadn't been finished in a toasted barrel.
Right.
So, I mean, I definitely smell a little marshmallow and I wouldn't say caramel, but it's sweet. It's kind of like brown sugar. I think you're right.
Yeah. Like Matt, you're talking about kind of a cookie kind of aroma, right? Like, yeah. Now, is this something, I mean, I know you make products for your consumers, but is this something that's in your wheelhouse? I mean, are you a fan of?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I love this.
Okay.
That's what. I think this is like. We want to do things for our consumers, but I mean, we try things that we think are going to be good ideas.
Yeah.
And in this, it just hits a lot of check boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, so one thing also to think about is just like the aesthetic that happens from the toasted barrel. This gets really dark.
Yeah. Oh,
in
yeah.
that extra 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
And so, and there are some mash bills that do get dark really quick. Like the blue corn ages more rapidly than its cousin, the wheated same mash bill, in terms of color, not in terms of taste, because they taste a lot different. Some people like the blue corn. It's not always. It's just not a wheated thing.
Yeah.
Some people like that flavor of the blue corn, but the color really does affect the mind.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is so dark.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
It is. And so, so it hits that. For me, I like drinking it on the rocks. I like just drinking it in general. I think it's one of my favorite products that we make.
Yeah.
High rye bourbon. There's a lot of high rye bourbon in the world. And probably 90-something% of bourbons are high rye, I would think. And this is a nice spin on a high rye bourbon that gives it a little bit more, sweetness and flavor and depth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that secondary finishing in that toasted barrel gives it a better mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is like one of the biggest things for me.
Sure.
So like, I like it, especially when it's on ice. I like to feel that density and oiliness on my tongue. And so I know that this does that compared to what it was like before. And it definitely does that here.
And again, I think we talked, I don't know if you mentioned it. This is pot distilled, your product, right?
No, this is not pot distilled. This is column distilled.
Oh, it's column.
But it could be some, it's something that we would do in our barrels or another barrel.
I got you.
And blend them or just use one or the other. That's sort of the other thing is with the toasted oak, it enables you to blend products together and then use the toasting to sort of like to level it out.
Yeah.
Put the crust on the cake.
So you're blending and then putting that blended product into the barrel?
No, well, we put them in. We just put it in the toasted oak barrels, and then we'll dump the toasted oak barrels together.
Okay, that's all right. So it's not like you're doing a blend of the bourbon and then putting it into the barrel.
We don't do that.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
But that's a good idea.
Well, I was just
maybe that has.
Well, I was just thinking if you blend it all together first and then like individually just use the barrels and put it out there.
Yeah.
See what happens. So, well, there you go. Can I get royalties on that, Sam?
Yeah.
Can I? I know an attorney he'll draft that up for me, right? So you got some other stuff going on too. We talked about it. We kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of barrels and the cask and things. The other business you guys are kind of doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So we own another business called Chevalier Casks. We're part owners in that.
Is that like Mad Men, the men's cologne Chevalier and Chevalier Blanc, or I'm just curious.
No, it's not, but I do like that. when I get home, I'm gonna go back to the Mad Men archives and see what the logo is.
You got to look it up. I think it's like a knight, with a flag.
That's what it is.
Yeah, Chevalier.
I mean, that's what ours is.
Okay, well,
But we got it off the internet, so maybe that's why it was that way.
maybe you found Chevalier because of Don Draper.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's not really nice to hear. I'm gonna go check that out. Yeah, so we came up with the name Chevalier because Chevalier is sort of a white knight.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So,
there you go.
So in the brokering industry, we do like to be white knights. I mean, they're my kin. So the people that we sell barrels to are bourbon pikers like me.
Yeah.
So I always look at it that way. Like, I mean,
might have to have a little bit more of this one. Go ahead. Just keep going.
and we try to, and we do have that ethos, you know, like
Sure.
these are people in the trenches with us. So we try to find them a good product and offer it to them at a good price. And so, you know, I like it because it's kind of like being an Indiana Jones of bourbon. You're like, what's out there, you know?
Nice.
And I used to be very Kentucky biased, you know, like, and I still am Kentucky biased on bourbon. Mainly because in Kentucky, don't be offended if you're from another state, but it is like the NFL a little bit, in that like you got a lot of competition. There's a lot of distilleries here. Like there is a Kentucky palate that is sort of a channel,
Right.
In that, you know, like Texas bourbon tastes different.
Yeah.
Not to say it's good or bad.
Right.
Texas
I agree.
bourbon, they've got their own channel.
Right.
But the channel that I'm playing in is the Kentucky bourbon channel, and so I know what that's like. And so I really didn't have a chance to taste that many other bourbons, like Ohio bourbon or Tennessee bourbon, Tennessee whiskey. And so now we deal in those different bourbons. And we also just deal in just bulk spirits in general, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a huge global industry. I mean, you know, like when people call us, we get a lot of calls for light whiskey. You know, we get calls for light whiskey. We get calls for 99.1. And so what I realize is, like, in other states and in other countries, people are really creative with it. You know, they use 99.1 because it's sweet.
Right.
They add that to like a blended whiskey. People use really, really aged Canadian whiskey for a lot.
Yeah.
Bardstown Bourbon is a good example of somebody that has used a lot of really super aged stuff to create really unique products.
Right.
And so, you know, in that, I've just sort of like learned to appreciate the scale of the industry. You know, and you know, some days I get afraid, like, is this bourbon thing gonna like come apart?
Is there a bubble?
Is there a bubble? And it's like, you know, really, we went to, our team went to Europe to the London Wholesale Spirits Association show, Bluegrass and Chevalier. And, you know, like, we have not even scratched the surface in Europe. I mean, barely.
Right.
Or in India or the Far East.
India's,
yeah. And so they have not gone through this like evolution of like small batch.
Yep.
You know, single barrel.
Right.
I mean, single barrel cash finish. And like none of that has happened in the rest of the world yet. So like they're still dealing in like 2 and 4 year products, and like super premium hasn't happened. I mean, it has for like certain huge brands like Blanton's, for example. You know, Blanton's overseas is huge, but you know, we have the upside is so large for bourbon.
Well, that's why, because people ask, you know, they'll ask me independently from the show and whatever, you know, is there a bubble, whatever. I'm like, look, even if domestically there's a lapse in the bourbon industry, if, you know, people stop or taste change or whatever. I'm like, there's an entire European community and the Indian market as well. I mean, where there's so many opportunities that, no, I mean, everybody's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you know, you've seen it, we've seen it in the wholesale market a little bit, like prices have changed a little bit. And there was sort of a price adjustment, which may have related to the interest rate. People just got scared.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my God, I'm paying 9.5% on this. It's not like real estate where it's paying the mortgage every month. And so, you know, there was to some degree a sell off, and, you know, now people who are in, it's kind of like real estate. Like, if you really could stay in after the crash, I mean, those are the winners. Those people ended up being huge winners.
Sure.
And so, and we've seen that again. Like, we've seen a lot of really cool older stuff come through.
Nice.
And one thing that happened, I think that like bourbon just got too expensive.
Yeah.
In the wholesale market. And, you know, like, it was not possible for NDPs to buy a 4,000 plus barrel.
Yeah.
Get it into a bottle, which is basically kind of what you have to do because you're doing just in time.
Sure.
You're buying, you're finishing maybe a little, and you're bottling. But, you know, if they were making $2 or $3 a bottle, nobody can stay in that.
Right.
You know, we were only getting 200 bottles out of a barrel. That's $400 a barrel for all that work.
Yeah.
Just didn't make any sense. And so supply to some degree did catch up with demand. and now it's reached sort of a price point where people can make a little money. It's a little healthier of a market.
Yeah.
And so you see people buying again. And but I think from my personal standpoint, as a broker, I was like, I get this. I see what's going on. But I like where it is now because I think people can get in and feel good about it because they can make some dollars.
Yeah.
And then they can hold it a little bit if they want to. So
Right.
like every once in a while we see some older stuff that's a really good deal. And people know it's a good deal because the market has kind of stabilized, like we've seen some 7-8 year stuff come through and people snatch it up really quick because they know it's a bargain.
Nice.
And so
Can we get some of that?
yes, you can.
Any listeners out there just want to get in touch with Chevalier or Chevalier Blanc?
Chevalier. And so we also, when we got into this barrel situation where we needed to find barrels for Bluegrass,
Right. Yeah.
I called my friend. We searched the globe for barrels. We started in Argentina because my thought was, they make a lot of wine in Argentina.
Right.
They got to have barrels. He's actually Chilean, and he called down there and they said no, they basically recooper.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, but then we found out that Spain makes a lot of barrels. They import white oak. Spain is actually the largest producer of wine in the world. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that either. But.
So he said, look, I can't find any down there, but I found them in Spain. So we went to Spain, and I mean, it is awesome. So these are generational. When I say generational, like 6 or 7 generations.
Wow.
The cooperages have been around for 100 years.
Wow.
They're not using gas. It's all on a flame. So they toast them first and then catch them on fire. And so basically, the Spanish are a little bit different in that they have dinner at 9 p.m. So I'm an 8:30 in bed kind of guy. You know what I mean?
It's like,
So,
I got kids. I'm going to bed. You guys have fun.
yeah. So so over there, I mean, Arturo would speak Spanish. I would speak Spanish. We would translate to those two guys, and then they would stay up basically all night long. And then Arturo and I'd be back in the morning, like talking to him. But it was really so we created relationships with 3 or 4 of them, and now we sell their barrels here in the States too.
Nice.
It's a different It's a different barrel. I mean, the staves are aged for 2 years. Yeah. None of this I would have known had I not had to know it.
Yeah. Had you not represented.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's right.
I mean, that's
had
crazy.
I not represented Arturo.
Yeah.
Had I not learned, Spanish. I
there
mean,
you go, man.
But so then we learned to appreciate the artisanal nature of those barrels, and they had been trying to get into the States for a long time. Now it's still not like. Everybody just wants these barrels because they're more expensive. Sure. But they are a tighter barrel, and the quality's there, and it's white oak, and they're aged longer, and so. But it's fun. It's neat. So we trade in those barrels, and we trade in the bulk whiskey, and we sell used barrels. We trade the used barrels. So it's fun to actually give dollars to other distilleries. So like I'll call or they'll call me and they say I've got 30 barrels, and I'll say, okay, I got somebody to sell them to. So it's fun to send those people money.
Yeah.
It is. Because they're like me. I'm like, what can I get for my barrel?
Yeah.
And if I can get a check from another distiller, it's cool.
That's very cool. That's awesome, man. I'm glad to see you guys. So it's it's a whole other business on top of everything else that's going on. But that's really cool. And I'm glad the barrel thing, it's still just the connections that you've made through what you've done in the past. And now that they've come back to help you in what you're doing, man, it's just, I think it's just really, really cool. So, Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey here. We've got the toasted oak, 100 proof. What do you pick up?
Good sweetness on the palate. I think the honey, the toasted sugars really come through. But it's not just all sugar. Some of that oak is really present in it as well. There's the creaminess of the marshmallow, has good mouthfeel, but then also the rye really comes through and punches through some of that sweetness. Yeah. With some baking spices, a little bit long on the finish, which was really nice too, to cut through some of that sugar with some long spice, some long heat on it. But like good marshmallow, good honey, good like kind of maple syrup type flavors, good mouth coating as well. Really well done.
Yeah, very nice. Sam, what about you?
I think it's a really smooth bourbon. Yeah. 100 proof it probably should be. But I do taste, sort of the sweeter notes, and also a little bit of clove. I mean, I get a little bit of clove, but definitely not like over. Really light.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it has a little bit of minty to it, which, you know, that probably comes from the proof, and it comes from like just sort of the cleaning up that the secondary barrel does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a complicated taste, and that it's sweet on one hand, and also it still does have a little spice.
I agree. Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we're almost at the end of the show, unfortunately. But Sam, before we wrap it up, though, let's talk about kind of the future things going on, releases, whatever else is coming up. I mean, obviously the distillery going to be opening soon, March, right? Yep. April. Okay. What else is going on release-wise and things for you guys? So
in the spring, well, in January, I think we'll have another. Well, I know we'll have another release of Elkwood.
Okay.
And then we will have a release of blue corn or wheated in the spring, and then we'll have another release of one of those in the fall.
Okay.
And then in Christmas we'll have like a whole series of releases. And so as we go into the spring, I think it's a whole new thing for us, because the farm is a real experience for people, because they will have a restaurant out there.
Nice.
They can come out. We do contract distill for people and contract bottle. So one of our goals was to make it very accommodating to those people.
Yeah.
So we have some really nice brands and some really nice people that we work with. And so they can have their own office and come out and hang out.
Very nice.
And when they're there, and you know, and then they could just kind of like linger around on the property. There's an old tobacco barn, and then, you know, but we'll have, you know, like it's strange to say family friendly, but it is family friendly. I thought about putting a fence up for like a kid park.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Mirror Twin where they had the kid park? It was a dog park, but then they got rid of the dogs and let the kids go.
Get a petting zoo, have a little goat and little donkeys and stuff.
Yeah. And so, you know, our goal was to be very uncorporate and sort of a Shangri-La bourbon. I went to that distillery in Nantucket. I cannot remember the name.
I don't know the name. Yeah.
Oh, but man, that place was awesome.
Yeah.
So it was on an old vineyard. You went there. They had like a food truck with lobster rolls. They had a band going. Kids were dancing, and I was like, "This is what we want to be." They sold beer there, and I think that model. Although we're not going to become a brewery, you know, they're two very different vibes.
Sure.
We do want people to come experience the history of Elkwood, because it has a really rich history. And we're going to tell the story of like sort of the antebellum house and property and what it was like in Woodford County. So, you know, that is what's to come. And I think it's, you know, it comes with a lot of challenges, really. Like we were talking about, you know, like, what do you do with spent mash? What do you do with, and so our experience, but I really look forward to that, because like these years of like getting to know like Brad Barron at UK.
Yeah.
Like now, like I have a real problem I can work on with Brad Barron.
Yeah.
And so it's just like a whole different level of commitment. I mean, our people, I meant to say this before and I forgot, but when you ask like what I would not predict, like this, it's the volume of work and number of decisions that you have to do on a daily basis to keep it going. But had I not had our existing team, we could not have done it, because whereas before I wouldn't say running the distillery operations, but I was really involved. I have not been involved in almost a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, really now I'm like coming back in, and it's kind of like they talk about like when the baseball players come back into the family, and the family's like, we're not ready for you to come back. I mean, so, but you know, like I think if you were to embark on one of these things, you're so like, you would be so, you know, half-minded. You have to be full-minded on the expansion, that it would be really difficult to do unless you had people who really knew the industry already. And so our people, they all did know the industry.
Right.
So like,
that's awesome, man.
They're 7 to 10 year veterans with us. And so like the marketing people, the distilling team, you know, they really don't need a lot of direction.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that was very helpful. And so I think that like one of the neatest things about this is like, I know that they have sacrificed for us and for the distillery.
Yeah.
And so, and they could have gotten better jobs. They could have made more money. They could have, at this point, they could all go work for a heritage distillery.
Right.
And so, but they didn't because they had been doing it. They stuck, you know, it was part of their thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think this is a really great thing for them because they can spread their wings.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to see. As much as I want to, like, make this sort of like dream and mission come true for us, I want it to happen for them.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because one of my last questions is going to be, what's been the best part of the journey for you so far? But it sounds like you kind of already answered that question there, to be honest. I mean, which is great. So can you tell everybody listening out there or watching, where can they find more information about you guys and where can they find your products, Sam?
Mm-hmm. So they can find more information at bluegrassdistillers.com.
Okay.
And really there. I mean, they can find, there's a page there that talks about the farm. It's called the Elkwood construction page. We are open at the Elkwood tasting room.
Okay.
And so you can come out there during the week.
So you're open out there and downtown?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and so they can drive out there during the day and see what's going on and see the lifts at work and walk around the house. I mean, I think people are like blown away at the house.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is really awesome.
I haven't been in there since the groundbreaking. I mean, it was obviously things were still going on out there. So, but yeah, we need to go back. We need to go out there, Matt, and check it out. We'll come out there and see you guys, man.
Just
drink some of that single malt you got.
Yeah, drink some of the well, that's to come. Well, that's to come. That's to come.
Awesome. Well, any final thoughts you want to share before you get out of here tonight?
No, I mean, I really appreciate y'all having me.
Oh, yeah, man.
Back, especially over the holidays. This is like a nice.
Yeah, this is fun.
This is like a nice light week, and
definitely.
You know, I'm sure my wife really appreciated that I'm gone again.
Hey, honey, it's the day after Christmas. I'll see you later.
Yeah, I do want to thank my wife because she's always very supportive.
Yeah.
She has been along this journey. You know, when she could have been like, "You just need to go back to your day job and be a lawyer." You know?
Yeah, supportive wives, man. You gotta love it.
Yours is right upstairs.
Oh, she is, man. So, and she supports what I do down here and has for the last 4 years. So there's no question about it, man. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Very fortunate. So very cool. Matt, any final thoughts you want to share before we get out of here?
Sam, thanks for sitting down, taking the time on this holiday week post-Christmas here, and walking us through everything. Always great to see you, reconnect with you, and get to hear what y'all have been up to. In 2 years, sounds like a lot has changed, and I hope it's not 2 years. Hope it's not more than 2 years.
Yeah, no doubt.
To have you back on again, and really excited to see what you all are doing out in Midway and out at the Elkwood farm, and see more about what you're doing in the future. We're looking forward to it.
Well, thanks. I mean, next time you guys can come out there, right?
Oh yeah,
you got all the equipment.
Man, we got the portable. Man, we're portable now. We're mobile.
Yeah,
we can definitely come out there and record, man. So
that'd be great.
We'll make that happen for sure. At least I can do it. And it won't be another 100 episodes, man. We'll make it happen.
Right. Let's hope not.
We'll make it happen sooner than that for sure. Sam, thanks for joining us, man. It's always good to see you, man. I love getting to hang out with you and love getting to see you, man. So it takes me back to the old days, you know, obviously from
right.
Not that I care to see many
trading outlines.
Yeah, exactly right. And not that I care to see many of the attorneys that we
they're just a wonderful group of people. Let's just say that.
Let's just say it. There's a select few though that I always enjoy getting to run into, man. So you're one of the select few.
I appreciate that. You too.
Awesome. But we appreciate it, man. I'm excited for you guys. I'm so excited that this is happening moving forward, man. The story's great. I love the way the people you've helped along the way, and now it's coming back to pay you back to help you. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I love that, man. So you've done a lot of good things for people, and now it's coming back to you, which is awesome as you build your brand and your business. And I think that's just really cool. So I'm happy to see that. I promise it won't be another 100 episodes for you. We bring you back. And thanks for sharing everything with us tonight. We've really, really enjoyed this. And I'm going to thank all our listeners. Thank you guys for joining us, or viewers. I guess I got to remember to say viewers as well, because we are now on YouTube. So thank you guys. If you watch the show, we appreciate it. Our listeners, thank you guys. Whatever time of day it is, like Matt always says, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is, you get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. Oh, and I'm going to mention Big Tex, Big Chief, the Whiskey Trip. We also, he's part of our crew as well. We put out his episodes once a week. as well. So be sure to check out the Whiskey Trip and see what Mike's doing over there, or Big Chief. Check him out, see what he's doing. So give him a listen. And we, again, appreciate you guys. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.